time, man. Hey, the talk is over. Now they got to deal with it.
Okay, you can go ahead and write it down and put it in.
The Arizona Cardinals select.
Now everyone knows.
Our coverage of the 2021 NFL Draft continues. It is day 3, the final day, and what has been a busy day for the Arizona Cardinals as you get a look inside the draft war room. As we say, welcome to Cards Draft Central, presented by Arizona Ford Dealers, Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. It has certainly been a lot today and over the last 3 days as the Cardinals, for one final time, MJ, officially on the clock with their second of 2 seventh-round selections. They entered today with 4 picks. They come away with 5 picks as we await this 7th and final selection here in 2021.
Yeah, and going into the draft, you wonder how much draft capital they would have, and they were able to move up with the Baltimore Ravens and make a trade. And you know, I know the fans were a little restless when they didn't get a corner, and they got a couple corners today. So you can't, check every box on the first couple of days. But I think on paper they definitely have improved the roster from a year ago.
It was inside linebacker, wide receiver on day 1 and day 2, respectively. Here on day 3, 5 picks, 4 so far have been defensive players as the Cardinals add a couple of corners and Marco Wilson and Tay Gowan, and then an edge rusher and Victor Demukeji, and then a safety out of Cincinnati, James Wiggins, with their first selection here in the 7th round. And now we await that last pick, the 7th pick of the 2021 NFL Draft. But a lot of needs met, especially we talked about wide receiver and corner going into this draft, MJ, and the Cardinals check boxes in both categories.
Well, it's funny how the draft, shakes out. Of course, Zaven Collins obviously was kind of, maybe over the last couple of weeks, got a lot of steam there. And then, the Cardinals were maybe looking for a corner in that 2nd round, and Asante Samuel Jr. goes 2 picks before, and then they end up getting, Rondell Moore. So that's the way the draft goes, and they stuck to their board, and they take the best available player regardless of a little bit of need involved. But, it's just like when you look at what they've done in the offseason, I think they've upgraded a lot of different positions, and through the draft we're going to see some starters in here. We're going to see guys get a chance to play on special teams. So when you look at the roster, it's a lot better than it was a year ago at this time.
And on this day 3, that's where you get players that you hope can contribute, but especially on special teams, especially when you're talking about these 4 picks in the 6th and 7th rounds. Again, no pick in round 5, but the 4th round selection, Marco Wilson, the cornerback out of Florida, I think does have an opportunity to compete, if maybe not to start right away, but at least get on the field right away, because this is something that right now the Cardinals desperately need. Malcolm Butler on one side, you got Robert Alford and Byron Murphy, but then that question mark is who that other corner is going to be, and Wilson certainly at 6 feet, 191 pounds, can be that guy, at least an opportunity.
And a physical freak. I mean, we'll get into some of his measurables, but, that's where the scouts earn their keep on day 3, because, we focus so much on the 1st and 2nd and 3rd round, and rightfully so, because you got to hit on those guys. But this is where the scouts do their work, and they've been studying these players for a long time, and you just look at it, the depth chart looks a lot better today than it did on Wednesday. You look at the top 4 corners right now, you throw in, Byron Murphy, you throw in Malcolm Butler, and then Robert Alford, and then you look at, the next corner on the board, and then all of a sudden you look at the wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Green, Christian Kirk, and then you throw in Rondell Moore, all of a sudden the depth chart looks a lot better.
Yeah, especially at wide receiver and cornerback with the 2 selections. Wilson certainly impressed a lot, especially at his pro day. There were a lot of scouts in attendance. People wanted to see Kyle Pitts. People wanted to see Kadarius Toney, yet it was Wilson who really opened up a lot of eyes. A 4.37 40. He out-jumped the Vertec. Let's just put that in perspective. It is 43.5 inches, and this kid jumped 44 inches. So he does have all the measurables that you want as you take a look at the great picture as tweeted out by the Arizona Cardinals Twitter account. And it is amazing. I've never seen this before, MJ, that you have an athlete that out jumps the vertex and only goes so high. So Florida marked it as 44 inches, but officially it goes as 43.5 inches. Certainly the athleticism is what you want to see when you're talking about that secondary.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what these guys can do. When they're obviously getting drafted, and you go back and watch some highlights, and then you go to their pro days, and it's fascinating. And they've worked hard to get to this point, but just the physicality and his upside and what he can do on the field is going to really help this team.
We understand the pick is in as we get a look inside the Cardinals draft room. Again, it is the final pick of the 2021 NFL draft for the Cardinals. Pick number 247 overall, the 5th pick here on this 3rd day. And so far, the first 4 selections have all been on defense. 2 corners, an edge rusher, and then a safety. So we'll see if Vance Joseph gets another player to use on defense, or maybe Stadium Manager Steve Keim throws him a bone and says, hey, let's give you an offensive player for head coach Cliff Kingsbury. But certainly the Cardinals, as you said, filling a lot of needs over these 3 days.
Yeah, I'm sure Steve Hyden's over there saying, can you get me a tight end? And again, all the coaches have put their input in. Obviously, the personnel decides who makes the picks.
Cardinals, though, as I think addressed what were the 2 biggest needs at corner and wide receiver. You can never have enough offensive or defensive linemen, especially those guys in the trenches, because you don't know how things are going to play out during the course of a season. And as you're looking at this 7th round picks, and even in the 6th round, it's guys that you hope maybe if you don't contribute right away, that you have an opportunity to develop, whether that's this season, you get on the practice squad, get some more reps, and someone that can help maybe down the line, but certainly that you're looking for here. And the pick is a center. So we get our first offensive player. It is center Michael Mehmet out of Penn State, another offensive lineman for the Arizona Cardinals. So someone that might be able to get some good guidance from Rodney Hudson, who the Cardinals acquired in the offseason to be the starting center.
Well, there's nobody else better to learn from. And again, Hudson's on the contract for the next 2 years, so you kind of look ahead a little bit. And hopefully these guys will get a chance to have rookie mini camp. They'll get a chance to compete in training camp. And worst case scenarios, you're on the practice squad. But at the same time, I couldn't agree more. Rodney Hudson's one of the best centers in football.
Started all 9 games this past season. In 2019, he was an all Big Ten honorable mention, so someone with great skill set at the center position, and that is something that the Cardinals, again, you're not looking to supplant Rodney Hudson this season, but you can never have another offensive lineman, and as a center, maybe it's someone that you can kick out to a guard and play the interior.
Yeah, we know position flexibility is huge, especially for those linemen. The more you can do, and usually when you're a center, you can slide over and play guard.
So the Cardinals with 7 picks here in 2021. 2 linebackers, 1 inside, 1 outside, 2 corners, a safety, a wide receiver, and an offensive lineman. As the general manager, Steve Keim, is the one that was responsible for all of these picks, and it has been certainly a busy 3 days for the general manager, and he joins us right now just outside the Cardinals draft room. Steve, congratulations on a tremendous 3 days. I know it's a year-long process. You've talked about day 1 and day 2, so let's focus in here on these 5 picks in day 3. And certainly cornerback is something that we have all discussed, and not only did you get 1, but you got 2 today.
We did, guys, and with the young man from Florida, Marco, we had such high grades on him that the opportunity to go up and to be able to get a corner who can play outside, 30-plus starts in the SEC, tremendous speed and athleticism, and we really felt like he had a lot of good tape playing inside and outside in the SEC at nickel and on the perimeter. So I feel like he's got a ton of upside for a guy that you get in the 3rd day of the draft with that type of skill set. We're really excited.
And then your second corner, Steve, Tay Gowan, who on a conference call with the media here said, quotes, "I'll be the Tom Brady of corners." I think you like to hear that out of a corner selected in the 6th round.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who JC transfer, only at Central Florida 1 year, of course, opted out this year with the COVID stuff. But I mean, another guy, 6'1", tremendous movement skills. Really thought he was a great outside press corner, which is a great fit for us schematically and what Vance Joseph likes to do. So Greg Williams, our defensive back coach, went to Central Florida, worked him out with those two other DBs. Felt like this guy has a tremendous amount of upside, and again, is just scratching the surface. So again, really excited about these two young men from the state of Florida and think that they're going to be able to come in and contribute early for us.
Steve, when you look at what you've been able to accomplish this offseason, and it all started with J.J. Watt, and clearly you're going to continue to add to the roster, but I think when you look at a lot of different positions, you've upgraded from a year ago. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%, Mike, and you know, a number of things. Not just upgraded the depth, but the physicality, speed, and then more than anything, probably leadership. Guys in the locker room that are tremendous leaders from top to bottom. Not a lot of guys who are probably talked about as followers, but a lot of alpha males, a lot of guys that love and are passionate about the game.
Curious, Steve, on your first of 2 6th-round selections, the edge rusher, outside linebacker out of Duke, Victor Dimukeji, on what you liked about him. Doesn't really have the height, but certainly has, as he said, the leverage to certainly set the edge and get after the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch him on tape, there are some similarities to Marcus Golden when you see a guy with almost 6'2", but he's got almost 34-inch arms and got a really good first step, plays with a lot of passion, great leverage. Thought he had a nifty edge rush on him for a guy who's only probably 6'2". Again, love his passion, love his work ethic, really intelligent, high football IQ. So a guy who also was a leader at Duke, and really feel good about what he can do for us at outside linebacker.
Steve, you look at your secondary, and clearly you're adding corners. Let's talk about the safety and Wiggins and how much depth you have back there now.
Yeah, Wiggins is a guy, Mike, that can play both free, can play strong. He ran 4.45 at his pro day at Cincinnati. Really good striker, can be violent. 4-core special teamer, so a guy who can play teams for us and add speed and athleticism to those units. So again, he's another guy that's passionate about the game. And
I got
really
the impression this offseason that you really wanted to make an effort to when it came to the return game. Talk about Rondell Moore and how he can help that.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who's just so explosive. Anytime the ball's in his hands, he's like a running back who's shifty and has tremendous elusiveness, as well as his speed from 0 to 60 is just phenomenal. He gets the top-end speed in seconds, and he is a guy that I think can be a true weapon for us in the return game, both as a punt returner and a kick returner.
Well, you went offense with your final pick here in day 3 of the 2021 NFL Draft, drafting a center out of Penn State, Michael Manette. What did you like about him, yourself being a former offensive lineman?
Well, he's from the great state of Pennsylvania, so that says a lot about him. But, yeah, you know, a guy that's a hard hat and lunch pail type. I mean, he was a 2-time team captain there, really good technician, smart, instinctive, really, to me, the qualities that it takes to play at this level, to be able to identify the mics and the fronts and the different things that the centers have to do nowadays. He can handle all that mentally, as well as being a really good technician, having good short area quickness, and more than anything, being a great leader in the locker room.
Steve, appreciate the time. Again, congratulations on an outstanding 3 days. And I know there's no rest ahead, but at least the draft is over with.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon.
General Manager Steve Keim, following the 7th-round selection of Penn State offensive center Michael Manette. The Cardinals with 5 picks, MJ, here on day 3. Again, they entered with 4, but with the drafting, or I should say the trade, with the Baltimore Ravens, they acquired an additional 6th-round selection. And the Cardinals, again, going with a lot of defense here, but when you look at the offense, a wide receiver and a center, but heavy defense, especially in the secondary.
Well, when you lose, a few guys on defense, they moved on from Patrick Peterson. You had to fill that spot, and that's Malcolm Butler. And then, you couldn't re-sign every single free agent. And Hassan Reddick signed with the Panthers, and so you re-signed Marcus Golden. But also, you had some depth at that position. They retained some of their exclusive guys. So, like I said, I don't mean to be redundant, but I feel like this team has made vast improvement. Now it's on paper. They got to prove it on the field for the upcoming season.
As I mentioned to Steve, yes, the draft is over, but there is still work to be done because the Cardinals, as with every other team now, will sit there and figure out who's still out there as far as these undrafted rookie free agents, and then look at the free agency board once again as we take a look at the biggest team needs now post-draft presented by Microsoft Teams. As, again, certainly there were needs addressed here, but as we look at our Microsoft Teams tablets that we have in front of us, MJ, I went even with the drafting of 2 corners here on day 3 of the 2021 NFL Draft, I still would like to see this team add a veteran, maybe a couple of veterans at cornerback, just to have some experience on the other side of a Malcolm Butler and a Robert Alford, and then a tight end. That is something that I think the team will look to address in free agency because right now there are only 3 on the roster. And the number 3 for me, another guy in the secondary, maybe another young safety. Yes, they did draft James Wiggins as safety out of Cincinnati, but maybe another veteran in that safety room to provide a little bit more depth.
All right, I'm going to go with tight end. And they could go after a free agent tight end that's out there. And usually wait for after the draft. Now, usually the coaches and scouts will get on the phone in the 6th and 7th round, so they're going to bring in some undrafted free agents. You're only allowed to bring in 5 free agent tryouts because of COVID. So I went with tight end, defensive end, and offensive lineman here. So to me, you can never have enough interior linemen and edge rushers. So I think the Cardinals obviously have filled some of those needs. But tight end, to me, losing Dan Arnold, you got Max Williams, you got Darrell Daniels. There's only 3 on the roster. And I would say at that point, you want to bring 6 to camp. So for the most part. So there you go. Tight end. And then you look at defensive end, again, enough pass rushers, and then I always think you can always have enough offensive linemen. You got to stack the roster. And again, some of these guys won't make it initially, but they have the practice squad.
So we agree with tight end just because the lack of depth on the roster. You mentioned there was only 3 on the roster right now: Max Williams, Darrell Daniels, and Ian Bunting. And I do think corner, just to get some experience. Yes, you have Robert Alford, but he has not played the past 2 seasons because of injuries. So you worry a little bit about him just for the availability factor on Sunday. But I get what you're saying as far as edge rushers, because if you look ahead, Chandler Jones, Marcus Golden, these players only have 1 year left on their contract, so it is a position that you should at least look for. Maybe you can find that diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I think Golden, it was a 2-year deal.
Oh, that's right. That's correct.
Yeah,
that's right.
So you're good there, and he wanted to be here. You know, we'll see what they do with Chandler Jones because he's, in his last year of his contract, and obviously he's had a stellar career here. Guys like Chase Edmonds possibly get an extension. So, that's what they'll try to figure out during the season. And we got to see if Chandler comes back from the injury. It wasn't an ACL. Last year he got off to a slow start, and, he's a guy that they're going to need to play all 3 downs, and he's very effective getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, knock on wood, a healthy Chandler Jones certainly would help that pass rush. As we continue here, day 3 of the 2021 NFL Draft. It is Cards Draft Central presented by Arizona Ford Dealers, as we are now joined by Rolando Cantu, former Cardinals offensive lineman, now a member of the Spanish broadcast team. Rolando, you look at what the Cardinals have done here in this 3-day draft. Big picture it for me. What stands out to you about the 7 players that are now Arizona Cardinals?
Craig, Mike, thanks for the invite. You know what? I think we did a great job in the first round. Zaven is an excellent pick. I think what he brings to the table is that he lives in the trenches, guys. This guy does not shy away from the physical contact. Most linebackers that transition from college into the pros, they get stuck in traffic. And what you see from Collins, this guy combos a block. Whatever combo block gets his way, he pushes right through. Is a sure tackle. I think that'll definitely upgrade the linebacker room that we have now with the Cardinals. Cardinals. I think that was a sure pick for me. I really liked it. To be honest with you, I think our second rounder, Randall Moore, is an explosive guy. I don't know if you guys have seen that video going around on the social media platforms of him squatting 600 pounds. Señores, 600 pounds, that's more than three times his weight. This guy is explosive. I think he's going to bring a different factor to this receiver room who has, obviously guys that are just ballers with D-Hop and obviously the addition of A.J. Green. I think he will definitely fit right in. He'll compete from the get-go. The targets are going to be there. They're going to be restricted. But once he gets going, I think in the quick screen games, the lateral games is going to be something important for him to get some playing time on the field. And you know what? Our center from Penn, I think Michael Ment is an excellent addition. We heard GM Steve Keim talk about him. I like the guy. I think he brings, 3-year starter, a lot of game time, a lot of presence within that O-line. Also, to your captain guys, you don't just get picked to be captain. That tells you a lot about the character guy. And like Mike was saying, you can never have so many offensive linemen, right? That interior position. Maybe he moves from center to guard and plays all three positions. If he's versatile early in summer, I think he can definitely bring a different aspect to kind of support what we got going on for the protection of Kyler Murray. He can set. I love the pass sets. I was looking at some tape right now before we jumped on here. He can anchor it down. He can stop that bull rush. So sometimes it's very difficult to play center, snap that ball, and do that same thing. But what I see him, he can climb to the second level. And that's important in this scheme of Cliff Kingsbury. I think he can definitely do that. This draft has been definitely one of the drafts that we'll remember for a long time. But for sure, guys, I think we got a lot of value, especially in the later rounds for the Arizona Cardinals.
Funny how a former offensive lineman likes the addition of an offensive lineman to the Arizona Cardinals. But you brought it up, Rolando, that Rondell Moore can squat 600 pounds. I've got to ask, put you on the spot. On your best day, what could you squat?
My best day was 650, guys, and I was probably playing at 340 pounds. So you guys, from right there, this guy's I can say he's a small guy, right, because I'm a big guy. So this guy is definitely strong. He's got the lower body to prove it. That transitions into the quick game, into short game situations where he can create that separation, and also he can go and fight for that ball. So it's incredible for me to see a guy squat that much. And you know what? It just talks about his dedication, how he's been preparing his entire life for this situation.
Rolando, when you look at a guy like Xavier Collins, and it looks like he could be a day one starter, you don't draft him at 16th overall, but one of the things that they're going to look at is you look at Isaiah Simmons 6'5", you look at Collins 6'5". As an offensive lineman, what is that like when you're trying to block and Kyler Murray can step up in the pocket when you're looking at two trees out there?
You know what? It's difficult. To be honest with you, once they pair up and once they click and create that chemistry, because these are two young guys that are hungry, right? I like that conversation he had with GM Steve Keim, just saying, hey, we're going to get it from the get-go. From day one, I'm going to show you what I got. This kid is ready for the pros, and what he brings to the table is exactly that, the attitude. And once you play Mike linebacker, like I was saying, sometimes you get stuck in situations where you're in the cycle, right? You cannot get off the block. You're stuck in traffic. But this guy literally at Tulsa would create situations where he was just going in between the trenches. He can also play laterally. These two guys, they're going to be paired up here pretty soon. Collins and Simmons will definitely bring a different aspect and create that tone that we need in the linebacker room, because we know Jordan is getting up there. And also, once you put the mix of JJ and Chandler Jones in there, this is only a situation where these guys can develop and can actually produce from the get-go, which is very important.
I want to go back to your area of expertise, Rolando, and that is the offensive line. And when you look at a center coming into this team now, late round selection in Michael Manette out of Penn State, advice that you would give him, because it is going to be an uphill climb for him, not only within that offensive line room right now, you always have a lot of guys come in, but for someone who's a 7th round pick to try to make this team and then make an impact, maybe not this season, but down the road.
I'm a big fan of Rodney Hudson, and once he came to the team, 10-year vet, this guy does not lose his blocks. He's very solid. Automatically, the upgrade is right there. The center of the field will be taken care by Rodney Hudson. He's going to be one of the pieces that we were missing a couple years back, so Kyler Murray can actually have those that extra time, that extra second to scan and react and produce. I think once he comes in, Mena comes in, he just has to take it all in. He's been a starter at Penn. He has been in that room. He just has to take it all in and also, work his way through the ranks, right? Because once you're a rookie offensive lineman in that room, it could be just, you're there, you want to absorb everything, you talk once they address you. And I think this guy has a different attitude. The way he was a two-time captain back in Penn, the way he's been carrying himself on the highlights that I've seen, I think this guy can actually really quick kind of just put him on the spot and say, hey, you know what, this guy can become a backup, can become somebody that we can make in the rotation. And you know what, there's a long season, there's an extra game this year, you never know. But Ronnie Hudson for sure is a guy that has that presence that can actually get him under his wing and can develop him. So I'm pretty sure he's in a great situation. 7th rounder, you have nothing to lose. You go in there, you put your head down, you learn every single day, and you pay attention. I think that's what's going to get him through the mini camps and training camp.
Orlando, we know how effective Sean Kugler's been with that offensive line, and they may have tailed off a little bit. There could be a little shift in the offensive side this year, just more physicality. Obviously, Hudson's going to help Kyler Murray out with the calls, but talk about what he's been able to accomplish over the last couple of years. I mean, this team was top 5 in rushing, touchdowns, average per carry, and I think they're going to be better next year with obviously, Hudson, and then we'll see what happens at right guard.
Coach Kugler's been a big component of this new attitude that the Cardinals offensive line has to develop and has to present in order to be successful. We know from his El Paso days when he coached up Will Hernandez, that's one of my contacts. That's how I got in on the Kugler situation. He developed them, and I think once he got here, he just changed the mind frame. We need those physical guys, the offensive linemen that protect Kyler Murray, that run block, that have to be effective in this offense that we have here in the desert. Has to be, you have to have certain guys of character, right? And it has to matter. And I think slowly but surely, once the crew has gotten together, and to be honest with you, I mean, DJ Humphries is a big component of that. When we know when DJ is run blocking the way he has shown in the past, this thing functions, and it functions fast, and it has a tempo behind it, and it has an attitude. I think in order to be an offensive lineman under Kugler, you have to meet the requirements, and I think most definitely it starts with him. I like his style, the way he coaches the guys. I've seen him in action in training camp and also in practice, and this is just a situation where Mena can come in and develop in that aspect, because we do have the core, I believe, in a lot of years, that the offensive linemen that are on the roster right now will definitely have a big impact going forward for the 2021 season.
A lot of depth, too, at that position as well. Orlando, appreciate the time as you joined us here on Arizona Cardinals Draft Central, presented by Arizona Ford Dealers. Appreciate the insights as well. Maybe we'll check in with you a little bit later on down the line here on this day 3 of the 2021 NFL Draft. That offensive line, MJ, I mean, that is something that certainly is an upgrade, especially with Brian Winters, Justin Murray re-signed, and Kelvin Beachum back in the fold as well. But let's get back to what happened here over these past 72 hours, the 3-day 2021 NFL Draft, and what the Cardinals did on day 2, selecting a wide receiver out of Purdue, Rondale Moore. It is that phone call that every player in college, playing football in college, hopes to receive one day, and that is a phone call from an NFL team as we take you back to Friday, and that phone call that General Manager Steve Keim placed to Rondale Moore.
All right, 1 to go.
Is that your guy?
Rondale Moore, the wideout, kick returner, vertical jump like 42.5 inches. He looked like
he's a dog. Like,
yeah.
He's gonna come in and think he's the man, be a pro. Like that, when the ball's in his hands, he is special.
Got the return ability, immediate impact, return ability.
He'll be ready to roll.
Hello?
Rondale.
Yes, sir.
Steve Keim, Arizona Cardinals. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, man. You ready to come out to the desert?
No doubt. Let's do it.
All right, good. So this is the 49th pick, and we're going to make the selection. Excited about you, man. Think you can come out here and contribute right away. And our quarterback, Kyler Murray, is a big fan of yours.
No doubt. Got to team a little bit of extra.
Well, good, man. Well, I want you to celebrate with your family. I'm going to let you talk to our head coach, Cliff Kingsbury.
Rondale,
How you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm a lot better now than we got you. How you feeling?
No doubt, man. I'm good, man. I just want to say I appreciate you.
Hey, we're ready to roll, man. The things we'll be able to do with you in the offense, I cannot wait to get you here. So congratulations, man. It's well-deserved, and we love everything about you.
With the 29th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Grialou.
Love the celebration in the family room there of the family of Rondale Moore. And by the way, the pick announced by Cardinals starting right tackle Kelvin Beachum. So props to Beach as well to sit there and make that announcement. But the athleticism of a Rondale Moore, you heard Steve Keim in that phone call in the conversation with head coach Cliff Kingsbury. Yes, a wide receiver, but a kick returner, someone that can return both kickoffs and punts.
And that's huge. And, you know, Jeff Rogers, the assistant head coach, special teams coordinator, he's done a great job. We know there's 5 to 8 guys at the back of the roster that are backups or depth, and they play on teams. And, you know, the fact that that's been an issue. You know, they've tried with different guys, but now you got a guy that can do it. He's done it at a high level in college. And so when it comes to the kickoff and punt return, you want a tilt field position. You know, some teams are kicking a little bit higher. Some teams are kicking it out of the end zone. I think if it's 2 or 3 yards in the end zone, he's going to bring it out. And if you get to the 35-40, all of a sudden you get to midfield. So that's something that's been lacking. They've tried different guys, but now, to me, they hit a home run here when it comes to special teams and the return game.
Cards Draft Central presented by Arizona Ford dealers. Throughout these 3 days during the draft, we've been asking fans to tweet your draft pick reactions using the hashtag CardsDraft. And we have our one winner, our lucky winner. Congratulations to Stacia. Use the Twitter handle AZSTAISH. She's won a prize pack of Ford and Cardinals gear, including an autographed football from Cardinals first-round pick Zaven Collins. So congratulations to Stacia as she wins, I think, perhaps, MJ, I think maybe the first autographed merchandise or autographed item from new Cardinals first-round draft pick Zaven Collins.
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I don't know how many things he signed, but she's going to get the first. Congratulations.
Absolutely. The Cardinals, again, with 7 picks here in this 3-day NFL draft. But as we take a look at what the rest of the division had to do, because we do want to pay attention to see what the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Rams did as well. You keep kind of one eye, maybe, you know, a glimpse at what the different teams were able to do during the draft, just to make sure. And we'll begin with the Seahawks. And, of course, funny that in the second round, the Cardinals went wide receiver. Well, in the second round as well, the Seahawks went wide receiver out of Western Michigan, Dwayne Eskridge.
Well, you look at the Seahawks, and really they have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and then there's a drop-off. And, you know, they're bringing in other guys that they want to fill a position, and I think that's the case for all the NFC West teams. All 4 of the NFC West teams address the wide receiver position in the draft.
Seahawks did not have a lot of draft capital. They entered with 3 picks, and they leave the draft with 3 picks total as they head now into the offseason, getting ready for the regular season. The rest of the NFC and the big winners, at least during the draft, the 49ers, they had 8 picks. And, of course, everyone looking at the quarterback, Trey Lance, who went 3rd overall, and whether that is the future quarterback. And whether, MJ, the question is, does that happen this season, or is it after they decide what to do with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, I think Jimmy Garoppolo's on a 1-year deal, and they'll move on. I think that's very clear. Now, you know, depending on how they start, we know Garoppolo's been injured, but he's had a really good record when he's been the starting quarterback. I think you're going to see they're going to have a handful of plays when it comes to Lance. And again, he's a different quarterback. Obviously, it's not going to change their offense, but I would think they're going to have a handful of plays where, in this case, you would take Jimmy Garoppolo off the field, where for the Cardinals, you don't want to take Kyler Murray off the field.
Interesting that the 49ers drafted not 1 but 2 running backs. Trey Sermon out of Ohio State, and then Elijah Mitchell out of Louisiana. And that running back room, they are certainly running back by committee, and they've been that way for the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, and it really starts with their offensive line. Trent Williams, and you look at Mike McClinchy, who they picked up their 5th-year option. But they rotate their running backs, and they do a great job with the motioning and shifting and trying to get matchups on the defense.
The last team in the division, the Los Angeles Rams, they had 6 picks going into the draft. They finished, though, with 9 because of a lot of late-round selections. You see 3 in the 7th round, 3 in the 4th round. But as we saw with the Seahawks, wide receiver, their first selection, Tutu Atwell, a speed guy out of Louisville, as the Rams, like the Seahawks and the Cardinals, go wide receiver on day 2.
Yeah, Tutu, he weighs about 153 pounds, but he's fast. And if you look at the Rams, weapons on offense, they went out and got Deshaun Jackson. I still think he can be the deep ball with Matthew Stafford. They have Cooper Kupp, who's one of the better slot receivers in football, and then you throw in Robert Woods. We know he's a game changer, so that's the reason why you got to have pass rushers in this division, and that's why you got to have cornerbacks that can cover.
And they loaded up on wide receiver as well, drafting 1 in the 4th round and 1 in the 7th round for new quarterback Matthew Stafford. So a lot of more weapons for him to figure out that offense.
Listen, we've talked about it. If the Cardinals want to make the next step to get to double-digit wins, you have to improve your division record. They got out to a 2-0 start last year, and then they go 2-4. That's got to change. You got to go 4-2, and you got to scratch out some road wins. They had a great win in San Francisco in Week 1, but you got to have a better division record and a conference record, and that will get you in the postseason.
Our coverage of the 2021 NFL Draft continues. It's Cards Draft Central, presented by Arizona Ford dealers Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki here at Cards HQ, as we take kind of a big picture look at what the Cardinals not only did here on day 3, but the entire draft. And I'll go back, and the needs were addressed. They needed a cornerback. They needed another playmaker at wide receiver. At least for me, MJ, those were the top 2 needs, if you will. And I know General Manager Steve Keim doesn't draft for need. You take the best player off the board at the time that you selected, as the Cardinals did with the first-round pick of Zaven Collins, 16th overall. Not necessarily a need, but the talent too big to pass.
Well, I mean, it's just fascinating to me the way things unfold. And we're not in the draft room. They don't tell us who they're going to pick. But if Zaven Collins was gone, it could have been Najee Harris. I mean, you had him ranked that high on the board. And then you start looking at the second round. It could have been a corner. Instead, they get a wide receiver. So they stick to their board. And, again, I think they've added some depth. And it seems like they signed J.J. Watt a long time ago. And that set up the entire offseason. And they have added a lot of upgrades at certain positions. So the team should be better on paper, but we know you got to play the game on Sundays.
We review the teams now needs presented by Microsoft Teams as far as what might be happening now in that front office, in that draft room still, as far as what players they might try to add as far as undrafted rookie free agents. And then once again, looking at the free agents that are still out there. And I'll go with cornerback. And I am kind of curious on the tight end, because I know that's number 1 for you. We haven't seen a lot of the tight end utilized, especially as a pass catcher. Certainly blocking, yes, with Max Williams and Darrell Daniels, but we just really haven't seen it. And now with the loss of Dan Arnold, who was that one deep play threat at the tight end position, I just wonder now if we're seeing, because of the moves that have been made, a little bit more physicality and more run, and then passing to wide receivers and running backs versus the tight end.
Well, I would think you want to get a guy that's a dual threat, because Max Williams, we know when throwing the ball, he can catch it, but he's more of a meat and potatoes. And Darrell Daniels is playing on special teams, more of a physical extra blocker. Tyler Eifert is still a free agent, and we'll see what happens there. He's a guy that, he's played 29 games. He's had some injuries in his career, and that's what teams are going to do. But, normally the scouts are on the phone to get some of these undrafted free agents to come in. And getting back to the rookie class, I am just thrilled. I can't tell you how thrilled I am that they're going to be on the practice field within the next 2 weeks. And last year, everything was canceled. And then obviously, we'll see about the OTAs and the mandatory mini camps. And then we're going to have actually a training camp, hopefully somewhat normal, obviously social distancing. And then they're going to play 3 preseason games. This is night and day from a year ago.
And any and all reps matter. The more you can do before you hit the field for real. And remember, it is a 17-game regular season schedule. The Cardinals certainly want to make that next step forward, that next jump. Postseason is the goal in 2021.
And the key for the rookie mini camps, and I would have, first-year players from last year, if they're eligible for that. I mean, obviously, you're going to try to get it. They'll have a couple arms there with their backup quarterbacks. But the thing is, you can make mistakes on the field. Then you go in the film room and correct it. And then you hope the next day you don't make the same mistake, because when the veterans are here, you're probably not going to get the same reps unless you're drafted in the first 3 rounds. where you better make sure you take advantage of your reps. But in these rookie mini camps, that's where you make your mistakes, but don't make the same mistake twice. And again, when you're thinking, you can't react as fast as you want to on the football field.
It is all about the work now in the offseason as we gear up towards the regular season. A reminder, the schedule will be released May 12th, but we invite all Cardinal fans to come to State Farm Stadium because fans in the stands, that's what we all want to see here in 2021. So secure your tickets now by calling 602-379-0102 or visit azcardinals.com/season. We'll see the Rams, Niners, and Seahawks. That's obvious with the NFC West, but also the Packers, Texans, Colts, Vikings, and Panthers all will pay a visit to State Farm Stadium. Get your tickets now.
I can't tell you, and I think you're in agreement with me. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this organization missed the fans last year. I mean, there was a big difference. And then for those that were able to show up, you made a difference. But get the Red Sea rocking again, and let's win a lot of home games in 2021.
It is certainly something that I think we're all waiting for is the regular season. And, again, there is still work to be done. And as we focus here on Cards Draft Central presented by Arizona Ford Dealers, how about we hear some more from the general manager, Steve Keim, and head coach Cliff Kingsbury as they address the media.
All right, one more time. We've got Coach Kingsbury and Steve Keim available. So, as always, please use the raised hand. Please direct your question to whichever one of them you're asking. And we will start it off with your questions in the order of Darren, Bob, and Josh to start out.
Hey, this is for Steve. Steve, you guys obviously went into the draft thinking, okay, maybe a cornerback would be good at some point. You didn't get it the first couple of days. How do you feel now that you got these guys on day 3, and where does that room stand for you right now?
We feel very, very good, Darren, especially when you see the type of players we got and in my opinion, where we got them in the draft. I mean, we have 2 guys who both have great size and tremendous skills for the position. Marco Wilson's a guy that can play inside and nickel. He can play outside. You saw the test numbers from his pro day. Has started over 30 games in the SEC and has played against the top college receivers that were in the NFL draft this past season, and we felt like handled that pressure very, very well, and comes from a family with great genetics. His brother played in the NFL. Greg Williams, our DB coach, coached his brother at the Colts, so knows the family well. But again, the guy has got a lot of skill. The grades across the board were extremely high, which is why we felt it was necessary to be aggressive and go up and get him. And then Tig Allen is a guy who's only played 1 year for Central Florida, but at almost 6'1", the guy ran in the 4.4s. He's got great athleticism as well, and he's a really good press corner. So he fits what we do schematically. So really excited about the fact that we have 2 young corners who can run and cover, and we can develop in this scheme.
Steve, can you just touch on the guys after that, Victor and the other guys you picked in the 6th and 7th?
Yeah, Victor's a guy that we liked for the past several months out of Duke. Reminds us a little bit of Marcus Golden when you look at the way he plays the game. High motor, great intensity, around 6'2", but has really long arms, plays with great leverage, and has some niftiness about him as a pass rusher. And then you look down at James Wiggins, the safety from Cincinnati. He's a guy that can play on all 4 core special teams early in his career and hopefully can develop into a starter. A really explosive player, also ran in the mid 4.4s, so brings speed and athleticism to your core special teams units, as well as the ability to back up both free and strong early on. And then Michael Manette is a guy that when you look at a 7th-round pick and an offensive lineman, you look at certain traits, and this guy has great leadership skills, very good technician, very instinctive and smart for the position. So 2-time team captain says a lot, especially coming from a program like Penn State.
Hey, Steve, this question is for you. With Marco, when you look back at what happened with the shoe against LSU, how much did that factor into your decision? What kind of questions did you ask him? And I guess how much of that incident took up kind of your space with him?
Yeah, when you always have something like that happen, that's sort of a red flag on a guy, so to speak. You want to find out what they were thinking and emotions. A lot of times I know calls some mistakes like that, and he owned up to it, talked a little bit about it with us. And I think, the great thing about when you make mistakes, and we all make them, whether you learn from them or not. And he's a guy that certainly, I think, learned from that mistake and realizes he's got to keep his emotions in check, and how that can really affect a lot of different people, not just himself. So I think he's a guy that'll learn from the lesson. He's intelligent. He really understands defensive coverages and the schemes. Again, the ability to play inside and out. He's a student of the game, and he to me is a guy who really didn't get the credit he deserves. I think he played better than people think. Sometimes it can be tough in that conference, obviously, matching up against the people that he did. But when you look at his skill set and the things that he can do, and then you throw in Vance and Greg and some of the people here that I think can continue to develop him, I think he's got a bright future.
Next up, please, Craig, Kyle, and Jess.
Oh, this is for Cliff. Cliff, 7 picks, 1 wide receiver, 1 center, young center. How do you feel about the weapons offensively moving forward? Do you feel like you need to add a few pieces here before you get to camp, or what are you feeling today?
I feel fantastic about him. A.J. Green has been one of the most productive receivers in the league over his tenure there in Cincinnati, and can't wait for him to get out here and get a fresh start with Kyler and get on that grass and enjoy this Arizona weather. And obviously Rondale is one of the most explosive players in the draft, that jitterbug that can make things happen in space. And so you add those 2 weapons, you bring in Rodney at center, bring in Brian Winters, you have Josh Jones waiting in the wings up front. I mean, you're better offensively immediately. And then James Conner, you have Chase who can do some of that stuff in the pass game, and then a big bruising back like James. Couldn't be more excited about where it's at and where it's heading.
Hey, Cliff, looking at the first 2 rounds, with as close as you guys were to making the playoffs last year, were you hoping to find guys that you could maybe plug in as quickly as possible, and you feel like Zaven and Rondale both fit that bill?
Yeah, no question. I think that was the mindset going in, as we knew we had to get better. None of us were pleased with how that thing ended last year, and we wanted to improve through the draft. And Steve made that crystal clear to the coaching staff and personnel department. Those first 2 picks need to play and play early and play a lot. And that was the mission, and I feel good about where it's at.
Hey, Steve, I know you mentioned a little bit about Dimukeji a little bit. Perhaps he was a little bit of a surprise over someone more well-known as Quincy Roche. What did you like about Victor over some of those other guys? And secondly, what plans do you still have at the tight end position? Is that going to be a position of focus as you look at undrafted rookies and maybe some veterans after the draft?
Yes, Jess. So I would say that when you look at Dimukeji, a guy who played opposite of Rumpf at Duke, he's a guy that had, again, the way he plays with passion, his physicality, has really explosive hands and a strong punch. But, you look at his production, and I think he had 7.5 sacks this year, maybe 8.5 last year. So his sack production has been good. He plays with a high motor. He's consistent. He's smart. He does all the right things. And that's, to me, what you look for in a guy who could potentially not only play on teams, but play a certain role defensively. As far as the tight end position, again, you wanted to trust your board. We didn't want to get into a position, even with those corners, as much as most people would ask about the specific need for corner, we wanted to let the board fall to us the right way, and which is why we went up and got Wilson and obviously selected Gowan at that spot, is because both of those guys had big grades and big grades across the board, not only from our scouts but from our coaches. So same thing with the tight ends. We'll trust the process. We really didn't feel like there were any tight ends that warranted selections at the spots we were at. We had higher graded players, but we will address that position in free agency, and we feel like there's a couple guys who could potentially help us.
We'll go next to Catherine, Tyler, and Darren.
Steve, now that you're able to look back at this draft a bit more big picture, obviously you knew all the challenges going in, how it was going to be a bit of a weird year. So how do you think y'all adjusted to handle that? And what were some of the notable ways that you adjusted?
That's a great question, Catherine. And I think we just had a little ceremony in our draft room, which was fun. It's the first inaugural Rod Graves College Scouting Award, which goes to the guy who is our top scout. And it's based on 3 years of analytical research and how accurate the scouts have been on their grades. So it was fun for us. It was great to acknowledge Rod and all the things he's done for this organization, which makes me extremely proud. You know, growing up under him as a young scout taught me a lot of great lessons. But I think what I was getting to is the fact that Rod used to always teach us young scouts that we all know when people cut corners in this business, and that's attention to detail, leaving no stone unturned. And I think that really is epitomizes this draft for us. And that's the fact that none of our coaches or any of our scouts left any stone unturned. Those guys worked their tails off, even with the obstacles out there, guys opting out or having to go back to 18 tape or 19 tape, and some of the limitations that we had in access to players. Those guys went above and beyond, and they worked their tails off. And I can't thank those guys enough, the scouts, the coaches, and everybody that went above and beyond for us this year. So I think that really sums it all up for me, is the fact that everybody dug in deep, rolled their sleeves up, and we got it done.
Really glad we had an opportunity there to eavesdrop on General Manager Steve Keim and Head Coach Cliff Kingsbury, especially what Keim had to say there, those last comments about the scouts. We all focus on General Manager, we focus on Head Coach, but it's those people behind the scenes that do the work, as Steve mentioned, the countless hours, not so much on the road this offseason or this scouting, but as far as the hours of film watching and then getting the information, Zoom calls, telephone calls, to figure out just who is worthy of being an Arizona Cardinal.
Yeah, Drew Grigson was on the Big Red Rage, and he said him and Quentin Harris kind of put together a mini combine. And so they had a lot of times where these scouts have been working on these players for the last couple of years, and you know, they got some promotions this offseason, including Quentin Harris, Adrian Wilson, Drew Grigson. You know, it seems like everyone's on the same page, and when everyone's pulling the same way, that you're going to have success in the draft and in free agency, and all it's going to come down to what the season is. But, you know, I'm glad he mentioned Rod Graves, because Steve was an area scout down there in the South, and once they, you know, felt like, oh my God, this guy really knows how to scout players, let's have move to Arizona, and I mean, he became the general manager. But Rod Graves, you know, he ID'd him as one of the better scouts, and you could see coming from the South, Adrian Wilson, some of the other draft picks.
A long, hard work worth of years worth of work, as the professional broadcaster tries to say here. After 3 days of the 2021 NFL Draft, the Cardinals, at the end of it all, have 7 new players. We all focus on the first round and, of course, inside linebackers, David Collins. But the Cardinals do address the need at wide receiver, Rondell Moore, and at corner, selecting 2 here on day 3, and Marco Wilson and Ty Gelwin. 2 players that I think will have an opportunity to compete to be a corner, but I think certainly make a mark on special teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to kind of predict who's going to have the best rookie season. You got to think some of the high draft picks.
Absolutely. It has been a fun 3 days here, and we appreciate all of the hard work to everyone working behind the scenes, and we appreciate you as well for watching 3 days worth of Cards Draft Central presented by Arizona Ford Dealers.